Pain rippled through me as I watched my chosen mate and future Alpha Grayson Mars utter vows of love to another woman, Stacy Stevens. She was the beta's first daughter, and my former best friend. Like everyone else, Grayson turned his back on me when my parents were accused of being traitors to the pack. Alpha Mars didn't hear them out, and he ordered them to be killed. According to them, they traded pack secrets with our enemies and were part of a coup to overthrow our current Alpha. But it was all false. My parents were loyal members of the pack. The only reason I was left alive is that they didn't find evidence against me. However, they didn't treat me well. They locked me up in cells and tortured me for months, in hopes I'd admit to being part of the coup. All that didn't hurt as much as Grayson's betrayal. I begged him for months not to leave me, but he did. In fact, he did that in the presence of the whole pack. He embarrassed me and ordered me not to go anywhere close to him because we were done. He couldn't be with the daughter of traitors, or his father will take away his title as the future Alpha of Topaz Moonpack. I clenched my fist and jaw when the couple on stage said I do. For a split second, his eyes found me in the crowd, and regret instantly consumes him whole, but I looked away in anger and disgust for him. Stacy cupped his face and kissed him deeply. She then turned to me and smirked. "Bitch," I murmured to her. "I win," she whispered. Her eyes beamed with satisfaction. Stacy Stevens was a friend of mine for years, and was always by my side. But when things went downhill for my family, she was one of the first people in line to insult me. The woman even went as far as to seduce my fiancé and fuck him. She later announced to everyone that she was going to be his future Luna. Not me. I remember being stunned into silence for days when the news broke. "He is not the one," my wolf said softly. She was not angry or hurt by their union anymore. Heck, the two would kiss and hug in front of me, but I still felt pain. I loved him. I sighed, tears welling in my eyes. "I know, but someone better is coming for us. He will love us." She was sure of her words. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the future Alpha and Luna of Topaz Moonpack, Mr. and Mrs. Mars. The Alpha cheered, and the crowd burst out in merriments too. I snarled and left only to meet my two other nemeses, the beta twins Debbie and Kara. These two have made my life unbearable since middle school. I crossed my arms against my chest and glared at them. "Get out of my way," I snarled, and they only smirked approaching me. Debbie flipped her brown hair over her shoulder and shoved me. "You are in my way," she gritted. Kara made an attempt to push me to the ground, but I grabbed her by the hair and pushed her away from me. They still behaved like typical high school bullies despite being in their 20s, always picking fights for no reason at all. Kara attempted to punch me in the face, but I ducked and hit her with force, and blood splattered out of her mouth. She saw red, and both twins lunged at me. I fought them with everything in me, my inner wolf resurfacing. Even though I have not yet shifted, I was stronger than them because they didn't have any form of training, too scared they would mess up their hair or manicured fingers. The two girls were heaving, and blood poured from their lips and nose. We were separated by the guards, and soon the beta came in a hurry, inspecting his daughters for injuries before his hateful gaze fell on me. "You little bitch. What have you done to my girls?" The beta female spat as she slapped me across the face. The impact would have made me fall to the ground if the huge guard wasn't holding me. "What is going on here?" the alpha roared. He must have heard the ruckus all the way from the backyard. Everyone bowed to the intimidating man except me. I hated this man so much, and showing him any kind of respect would be agreeing that killing my parents was right. I found this daughter of the traitor assaulting my poor kids. "Alpha, this woman is dangerous and needs to be banished from this pack," yelled the beta female. I only glared at her. "She will be punished." But they started it. They always do yet. "I am the only one who gets punished," I spat. The alpha was angry at me and grabbed my cheeks. I whimpered as he applied more force. Just who do you think you are talking to like that, child? I can kill you right now and won't be punished. We should just banish her, Alpha. She will cause trouble for us just like her parents. The beta spoke. I always knew that he hated my father, and whatever supposed evidence they found, it was he who found it and was their replacement. We shall deal with this impertinent child later. For now, we have a meeting to go attend. The Alpha King is coming, he told his beta, who gave him a look of uncertainty. Why? He is angry at us because of the death of those ambassadors, and is probably coming to deliver his sentence. But why now? It has been months and it was an accident, Beta Steven said. The Alpha of the Blue Rays claims otherwise. Alpha answered. He indeed seemed worried, but who wouldn't? The Alpha of Alphas was visiting this pack personally. It couldn't be good. The Alpha King was the most powerful alpha amongst all wolves and was feared by many for his fierce reputation. The future? Luna. I was in the Alpha suite, cleaning as I did almost every day when I felt hands around me. I jumped and clutched my chest. I glared at the man who dared put his hands on me. Hey you, he said. I gave him a dirty look, showing him how much I abhorred him. Excuse me, I spat, grabbing my supplies and leaving the room, but he held me again, wrapping his filthy hands around me. Let me fucking go. Gray. He was indeed shameless. He didn't care that Stacy can walk in any minute now. I am sorry they hurt you, he said, his gaze roaming around my body. I pulled my shirt lower. I didn't have a wolf, so my healing was really slow. I scoffed and turned around. You are married. Don't touch or speak to me again, I sneered. Opening the door, I met Stacy on the door. She gave me a disgusting look and her gaze went past my shoulder to see her husband. Grayson only turned around and went to his office. She sniffed me. You are such a whore, she screamed, slapping my face. I didn't even know if it hurt at this point because I was so used to it. I tried not to fight back, but she pushed me against the wall. How dare you come here to seduce my mate, she shrieked. For someone who thought herself beautiful, she was insecure, especially when it came to me. I easily raised my knee to kick her, and she lets go of me. She crouched down, holding her stomach. You fucking bitch! I am your Luna. No, you are not, I said in a bored voice. She knew very well that her mate came on me, but is too proud to accept that. I bent down and grabbed her hair. Tell your fucking husband to stay away from me. Stacy attacked me again, but I blocked her punches. The door opened and Grayson walked out. He pulled me closer to him and went to Stacy, cupping her face. Stop it! You are embarrassing yourself, he said, looking around the bystanders. His gaze fell on me. Get out, he ordered. I was already on my way, Ashat, I murmured as I went on to clean the yard. I was cleaning when my wolf Kira alerted me that we were being watched. I lifted my gaze to the top floor, and indeed Grayson was looking at me intently. I only glared at him with hate and my skin crawled when his new mate stood behind him, caressing his bare chest. I looked away and continued my work. After spending the day working on my knees and hands, I was more than happy to go home to see my baby brother, but the new Mrs. Mars wouldn't allow it. She fucking gave me more work in the kitchen. Everyone was running around in the kitchen, cooking and preparing meals for tonight's banquet since the king was coming. The chef, a short, bitter, middle-aged woman, glared at me. It is this unruly girl again. What is she doing in my kitchen? She shouted. Yep, she wasn't too fond of me. In fact, no one at the pack house was. No one answered her. The staff gasped when a loud bang resounded. Again. Why is she in my kitchen? She squealed, making me cover my ears. She wasn't only rude, but awfully loud too. I pursed my lips, waiting for someone to answer her since she didn't ask me directly. The future Luna said. She is to help out, someone answered her. She snarled and gave me a once-over. Start peeling potatoes, and don't cause any trouble because I will burn you with hot oil, she threatened. I only narrowed my eyes at her and took one long stride towards her. I towered over her and growled, making her jump. It pleased me to see her look of fear on her face, and I smirked. My hand reached past her to get a kitchen knife and put it in her face. Mrs. Lai was shaking in fear. "Someone get me the potatoes," I smiled creepily, without taking my gaze off the short chef. I turned around and got a stool, peeling the potatoes without complaining. I heard that he can't keep a woman. They all die, and that is why even at the age of 28, he has no queen, one of the kitchen helpers said to her friend. They were talking about the Alpha King. Why? I don't know. He has a short temper and easily kills them when he is bored. The girl frowned. Debbie once said they danced together at a party. She wouldn't stop praising his good looks. I know, we heard that story the whole year. The other young lady giggled. What else do you know about him, other than what you know? Nothing. The king keeps his life private, despite being on the throne for 7 years. I listened to the girls converse about the Alpha King, and what they said shocked me. They made him sound like a monster, and a shiver went down my spine. By the time it was evening, everyone was frantic, running around, and when someone announced that the king's entourage was here, it was silent. The hall, now, the organizer commanded, breaking the stillness in the room. Someone put a tray of drinks in my hands and pushed me out. The hall was decorated beautifully, and the king's entourage was already on the high table along with our Alpha, his family, and the Beta's family. However, the king's seat and 2 others were empty. Was he running late, or was everyone just early? And why the fuck did I care? My heart was drumming in my chest. I was snapped out of my thought when a slap landed on my cheeks. Ouch! I groaned. Mrs. Lee was fuming at me. I glared at her in anger. Why the fuck did you slap me, you wench? I shouted. My eyes blazed with anger and she gasped epically, her heart pounding as she slowly backed away from me. Why? You were spilling all the drinks, so lost in your thoughts, and I did the first thing I thought, she screamed. I groaned at the back of my throat. I was fucking tired of people laying their hands on me. I had the strong urge to react and slap her back, but I contained myself. Breathe. Adira. I walked past the woman, making sure to hit her slightly with my body. I refilled my tray with new drinks and went back to the banquet, serving. I glanced at the king's empty seat again. Where was he? My lazy gaze roamed to Debbie and Kara. They asked men from the king's palace to dance with them, but they were rejected. That immediately brightened my mood. I was working with a gentle smile on my lips when I was suddenly pushed into a dark corner of the room. I gasped, seeing Grayson smiling at me. Let go of me, I hissed, trying to push him away, but his hands were tightly holding my waist. I could smell the alcohol on him. I know you hate me, he whispered in my ear. My gaze wandered around the room to see if someone could have seen, but they were too busy drinking and dancing. No, I don't, Grayson. I despise you, I said. I managed to detach myself from him, but as I turned to walk away, he grabbed my wrist and turned me towards him. My chest slammed into him and he wrapped his arms around me. Forgive me, please. I didn't care to hear him out. I was still struggling with Grayson when it hit me. The most remarkable scent in the world, fresh-cut grass. The whole banquet went silent as 2 extremely tall, handsome men entered the room. Touch my mate again, and I'll rip your fucking arms off. A growl resounded. The 2 men made room for a 3rd person to walk through. The man who spoke. He was the most gorgeous man in the entire world, standing at 7 feet, with black hair, dark, blazing onyx eyes, and high chiseled cheekbones. His blazing gaze stuck on me, and slowly, I felt Grayson's arms ease around me, and I almost stumbled, but touched the wall for support. The man took 3 large steps towards me and raised his hand to caress my cheek. I felt sparks rush through my skin, making me jolt back. Mine, he growled. I was trembling ever so slightly, and my heart was pounding as he stared at me like I was worth everything. I wasn't, though. I've been told and reminded that I was nothing every day of my life by the way they treated and mocked me, but the handsome man's gaze on me made me feel like I was worth something. It was a foreign feeling. I didn't know what it was yet, but it made me powerless. Not in a bad way. I was frozen in place, unable to react, whereas my eyes were stuck on his own. "That girl can't be your mate. She is nothing," Debbie's infuriating voice shouted, and the king abruptly shifted his gaze to her. Her body instantly started to tremble. She backed away, cold sweat running down her temple, and she stumbled and fell to the ground. "Why the fuck is your son harassing my mate, Mars?" he growled. He wasn't loud, but the authoritative tone he commanded made me shiver. Alpha Mars was petrified. "Ma mate," he stuttered as if trying to register it. If this was not a scary situation, I'd laugh at him. Grayson was so stiff, fear evident on his face. "Yes." He extended his hand toward me to take, but I shook my head. I felt dread deep in the pit of my stomach, and I did one thing that came to my mind. Run. "Get her!" I heard a bored voice command. I reached outside into the garden and climbed the first tall tree I saw, hoping the men he sent after me won't find me, but they stopped right under me. "Did she fly? How fast is she?" I heard one of the men say. They lingered around. Crack. I closed my eyes shut as the branch I was holding onto broke, and I fell right into the arms of one of the men. He looked down at me with a frown and dropped me to the floor. I landed on my side. I am sure I was bruised too. "Jet," his friend hissed. I groaned at the slight pain I felt in my arm. I glared up at the man who dropped me, and then his friends before getting to my feet. I backed away, running to go around him, but he blocked my route. "Stay away from me." My voice was quivering so badly, and the man in front of me only smirked. "What if I don't, teeny bird? What are you going to do?" "Fly into the sky this time. I doubt those short legs of yours can't take far." The blonde guy mocked and I was affronted. How dare he call me short? At 5'9" I was taller than most girls my age. "The king wants you back and I am too drunk to chase you. Let's go back, tiny bird." Jet, I think, said, making his friend chuckle. Was tiny bird a thing now? Seriously, that man, who claims to be my mate, is the king. "Yes," he answered. I already suspected it by his aura, but I couldn't believe it still. "The king of wolves." My heart started to pound again. How can I be mated to a freaking king? I am not going to him. He is not my mate. "No," I snickered, adamant on not going in with them. My wolf didn't sense him as my mate. The goddess would not be too callous to pair me up with the killer. My words seemed to stun them, and they glanced at each other. I used this chance to bolt, however. I didn't get far before I was hoisted into the air. One of the giants threw me over his shoulder. I screamed as I hung upside down, hitting his back with my elbow. "Put me down," I yelled to no avail. He carried me towards the hall. He put me down in the most ungraceful manner, and I let out a cuss, making the audience gasp at my audacity. Fuck werewolf hearing. I was in front of the high table. No one once spoke, and I wanted to faint. I didn't know, maybe it was from the way I was carried, or it was the Alpha King's grilling gaze on me. But I didn't dare look. Instead, I stole glances at Alpha Mars and Beta Steven, who were glaring at me. Grayson just looked disoriented by all this. All alcohol was gone from his body now, and next to him was Stacy. She was embarrassed by all this, especially since her new husband was all over me earlier. I felt it when the king stood forward. His demeanor carried authority, more power than any alpha I've known. No one compared. "Alpha King." The Alpha King circled me, and I shivered when I felt his nose on my skin. He was inhaling my scent like a drug he was addicted to. His finger reached under my chin and tilted my head up. His eyes showed shock. I could tell he was startled, but kept his composure. "What is your name?" His voice was calm. Adira, Adira Wade, I stammered. My heart still pounding in my chest. Everyone in here could hear it if I could. You are extremely gorgeous. Really beautiful, he said. My cheeks flushed. I never thought of myself as extremely beautiful as he put it. I felt ordinary. I was thin and not curvy like other girls. His fingers caressed my cheek. Why? Haven't you shifted yet? I don't know, sir. My voice was alien to my ears. Most of my peers shifted at age 18, but I didn't. How old are you, Adira? My heartbeat was irregular. I loved how my name sounded on his lips. 20 years old, I murmured. My voice was so low, but he heard. Are you scared of me? He asked. I didn't answer his question. Who wouldn't be scared of this dominating figure? He had a fearful reputation, and I was still stunned by this information. He sighed and went back to his seat. He called me to the high table. He frowned when I was hesitant, and he growled, making everyone uneasy with his dark aura. I didn't want to anger him, so I did slowly and surprisingly. He pulled me to his lap, placing a kiss on my shoulder. The crowd was shocked. My gaze was lowered to the ground, and I heard his cold voice. It is rude to cast your gaze down in front of so many people. Face your subjects, my queen. My gaze first went to my alpha and beta. Their gaze was icy, and it made me feel like I did something wrong. Grayson was just livid. He was gripping a table knife so tightly that his hand was white, and the Steven girls just looked terrified. I smirked inwardly. I was the Alpha King's mate, and no one can treat me like shit again. At least not these incompetent buffoons. The party continued with just one hand gesture from the king, and the drop-dead silence was filled with chattering. Tell me about yourself, mate, he asked. There is nothing to tell. My king, there is always something. I am an orphan, and I went to community college. I have a diploma in teaching, and I am a pack fighter. I used to help train the young ones. I tried to make my words clear and loud for him to hear. I was still frightened of him. That is impressive. Do you have any relatives? He asked, and I nodded. I have a brother Lucas. He is 12 years old, and I am the one taking care of him, I told him. Lucas was my cousin, but his mother died in childbirth hence. My parents adopted him since we didn't know his real father's identity. He urged me to eat, and only did I realize I didn't eat since last night. I picked up the closest fruit in front of me. A pear. They were my favorites. I took a bite of it while he watched me. I wanted so much to get off his lap. It was so embarrassing in front of everyone, but his hold around me told me he won't let me get up. What is your name? I asked, and he chuckled. I am Wyatt McMillan. His name was nice, and it suited him. His fingers were gently caressing my arm, helping me feel at ease. Is he our mate? I asked my inner wolf, Kira. She was also confused as we have not shifted yet, and we can only truly know that for sure when I shift for the first time. Let's wait for the blue moon, but I can feel the faint sparks. The blue moon is when shifters find their fated mate. Yay, me too. The party continued, and I was tired. At this point, I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I leaned against him as darkness enveloped me. She was mine, and oh goddess, she was more beautiful than I expected. She had long blonde strawberry hair, amethyst eyes, a unique color. I was restraining myself from fucking her right there. My mate was beautiful, and to think I didn't want one, and now I couldn't imagine losing her. Adira, my Adira, after years of hoping and praying for a reunion, here she was in my arms. I doubt she'd remember me since she was a child when I saw her last. We were only kids. My mother and hers were best friends growing up, but they separated since they went in different packs. One day, Aunt Meryl came to meet us with her little girl too. She was only 5 and I was 12 at that time, but we connected well. I remembered the anxiety that welled in the pit of my stomach when she was leaving. Can she stay here? I asked my mother. She smiled at me and shook her head. No, my baby. Maybe when you are older you can go to see her, Mother had told me. I nodded and gave her back to her mother. Little Adira gripped my shirt so tight and cried. She wanted to stay with me. We eventually parted. I thought of her a lot, but eventually that day became a blur, and my mind convinced me that it was only a dream until I found her again. I couldn't forget those eyes. She stirred a little in my arms, and only did I realize she was sleeping. I carried her out of the hall. Many eyes watched me in awe, and women were jealous of her. Adira was not popular, and I could tell she wasn't treated well by the way they glared at her. But that is about to change now. And that pup, the way he touched her, my wolf, Rolf growled. Anger took over when I remembered that. He touched her like he had some sort of claim on her. My wolf growled in my head. Our mate was mine, only ours. I was told that our rooms were prepared, and not wanting to wake her, I lay her gently on the bed. I watched her sleep before placing a lingering kiss on her forehead. She didn't recognize us. She was 20 yet had never shifted, even though her wolf appeared already. I was reminded by how her eyes shone a distinctive purple when our eyes locked gazes from up close. They were only one bloodline whose eyes were like that. The moon wolves. I'll ask my mother to tell me more about the Wade heritage. I walked out of the room and down to the halls. That fucker, Mars, killed 2 delegates. I pushed the door open to the conference room, and they got to their feet, bowing low. They only sat when I did. I hope you have a good explanation for killing those diplomats. I stared at the Alpha. He seemed uneasy. The aura that surrounded me was domineering and suppressed their wolves. We didn't kill them. They were involved in an accident. We wrote that in the report, my king. Mars said, and I narrowed my gaze on him. A fucking shitty report. Those delegates were sent to find out what happened to the Wades and hear from you in detail how and why they were killed without the parliament knowing of it. This pack was growing suspicious. We learned about a year ago that they killed the beta and beta female of the pack. So, we sent ambassadors to investigate but never made it alive. They claimed there was an accident and died plus. They forcefully took over their neighboring pack. We just heard an explosion as they left the pack and we rushed to the scene, but it was too late as their vehicle caught fire, Beta Stephen explained. He was a sketchy man who wanted power, I could tell. Could it be he had a hand in what happened to the Wades? But it has been 3 years since the death of the former Beta. Why are you investigating now? The Alpha's son asked. I glared at him and he tensed. Because there is something fishy going on here, and you lots have been problematic lately. Jet said, grimacing at the young Alpha. I don't follow. Taking over nearby packs. Are you fucking kidding me? I boomed. No. They started causing us problems first, and the solution is to kill the Alpha and take over their pack. I asked. They kept on explaining their actions in a way that didn't make sense to me. I was growing angry and tired as the minutes passed by. They will have to be dealt with later. My mate, tell me about her, I asked quietly, and everyone's face paled. There was a drop-pin silence in the room. I wondered why they acted so strangely. Should I repeat myself? I snarled, and the Alpha was the one who cleared his throat to speak. Well, her name is Adira Wade, and her father was the traitor Beta, he said, and I growled at him. She is a spoiled girl who causes us trouble. The Beta finished. He had a scowl on his face. Why was she serving when her rank is high? Aspen asked. I think I saw one of her peers taunt her too, my Gamma Jet said. Well, she, does some work for the pack. Like everyone else, he stammered in his words. And about the bullying, well, she fights back. She is one of our finest female warriors. I chuckled humorlessly. So you let anyone bully her because she is a warrior? What the fuck? Aspen said, shaking his head. I was furious. Her parents were traitors to the pack, so you can't expect her to be treated like any other member. We are wary that she can. I didn't let him finish his sentence. I had him against the wall, choking the life out of him. Did you imprison her after the death of her parents? His face paled even more when I asked that. I saw some old scars on her body, too. No, we didn't, King Wyatt. We only questioned her and let her go when we couldn't find evidence, he croaked. But you allowed your pack to treat a 20-year-old like trash, I growled. My king, it is not like that at all. Yes, there has been some incidents with her peers, but all parties were punished, Beta Stephen explained. His voice was trembling. The alpha's face was now turning blue, and threw him against a chair. He landed on the floor with a satisfying noise. I left the room and went to the guest bedroom where my mate was. I found her sleeping in a position I didn't leave her in. Bet she'll be getting more than half the size of the bed. I chuckled and stroked her hair. After taking a cold shower, I got in bed with her, and I allowed her scent to lure me to sleep. Strong, long arms were holding me tightly, and as much as I tried to wiggle out of them, I couldn't. I sighed and inhaled his scent. It was alluring like fresh-cut grass. I took this time to study this man, my mate. I still couldn't believe it. My fingers caressed his face. He had a stubble beard that suited him well and high cheekbones. His black hair was nice too, and I couldn't resist running a finger in it. And then his lips, his cherry lips, were inviting. And I could kiss them now. I jumped when his eyes suddenly opened, and a slight smile graced his lips. Good morning, he greeted. Good morning, I responded, trying to get out of bed, but he held me tightly, making my heart pound out of my chest as faint tingles rush up my body. He looked at me with his onyx gaze, taking me in, and I swallowed, maintaining eye contact with him. Have you taken me in? His voice was manly and deep. It made me shudder. My gaze fell on his bare torso and I swallowed. I raised my hand and touched him before nodding. He was a cocky one and knew how handsomely breathtaking he was. He brought his cherry lips to my forehead. The gesture seemed innocent, but it almost brought me to tears when I sensed the aura of purity around it. Ever since I was a child, I could decipher auras and hence didn't cower to others. My parents said it was rare and must have come because I was one of the special wolves born under the full blood moon once in decades. Are you all right? Wyatt noticed my somber state. Yes. Wait, Macmillan, the alpha of alphas. He was the most powerful man walking the earth and was worshipped for his notoriety. How could he be mated to me? Maybe he was wrong, but everything will be cleared the next blue moon. I need to go, I whispered. He frowned. He looked even more handsome when he frowned. He reluctantly let go of me and I got out of bed. I checked the digital clock and it said 9 a.m. Why are you in a hurry? He groaned, throwing a shirt over his bare torso. I need to check up on Lucas, I said. He extended his hand towards me and I took it. We walked out of the lavish guest room. I felt so many eyes on me and I held them. The twins looked at me with vexation, while others stared in envy and jealousy. I just wanted to go to my cabin now. Unlike most of them, Lucas and I stayed at a cabin not far from the pack house. As we exited the house, we came face to face with Grayson and Stacy. I stopped in my tracks, making the king stop too. Stacy glared at me once before she fake smiled at me. I didn't smile back though. My eyes met the man next to her. He was staring at me. Covetousness clear in his eyes as he looked at our joined hands. I almost felt guilty and pulled away, but the king growled and held my hand tighter. The two wolves in front of us composed themselves and bowed low to their king. He didn't even acknowledge me. Good morning, King Wyatt, Grayson greeted. He tried to sound cheerful but failed. The king went past them and I followed, leaving Grayson and Stacy standing there. We walked for a few minutes without speaking. I was getting more apprehensive because he seemed upset with me. That is me, I said, pointing at my lovely home. It was the smallest cabin in the pack, but it was our home. It was well kept and maintained. Why do you stay here instead of the pack house? He asked, looking at the house in confusion. Well, I am not well liked in this pack. I decided to tell him the truth. Are they mistreating? A strong aura surrounded him again, and I pulled away. He was a scary man indeed. He took a calming breath, burying his face in my neck. My scent calmed him. No. With the way he was acting, I had to lie because he might go there and kill the alpha. A smile made its way on my lips at the thought that he was angry. My pack was mistreating me. The alpha said my parents were traitors to the pack, so they killed them and they hate me for being their child. I shrugged, acting like it didn't bother me. His eyes were boring in mine, void of emotions, but from the way his jaw was clenched, I knew he was angry. You are Meryl and Ben's daughter, he whispered, caressing my cheek with his fingers. You knew my parents, I asked, surprised. My parents were quite popular because they were strong, and both were original strong betas line, which was uncommon for a pair. Usually betas were mated to warriors or gammas. I knew them. They helped my mother and I once upon a time. My parents weren't traitors, I croaked, and he nodded. I know that. They were good people and someone was just working against them, he said, cupping my face. Tears welled in my eyes at the thought of them, and how everything changed since their deaths. You can cry, he said softly, and like he pressed a remote, tears streamed down my face, and he pulled me into an embrace. Adira. An angry voice boomed, and I was startled out of King Wyatt's arms. I abruptly turned around to see Grayson standing there, looking pissed like he wanted to attack the Alpha King. Wyatt pushed me behind him and advanced towards him stealthily. Who the fuck are you calling in such a manner? He growled. Stacy ran to her husband with a few guards. She bowed in the presence of the king several times and said, Forgive him, your highness. He took some pills that are bad for him. Indeed. Grayson was high on something and couldn't stand straight, but his red eyes were on me, and he looked like he was crying. Fucking pest, I'll deal with him, Wyatt said, but I grabbed his hand. He tilted his head and his eyes met mine. I shook my head no and his eyes softened immediately. Please, help me take him inside, Stacy whispered to the guards. No, I want to talk to her. It is important, please, Grayson slurred. The guards dragged him back in the pack house despite his struggle. Stacy once again bowed to the Alpha King. Forgive him. The drugs he took were prescribed by the pack doctor, but he just overused them. Accidentally, of course. Stacy will always make up excuses for Grayson's mess-ups and childish behavior. Prescribe drugs seriously. Girl, bye. Wyatt dismissed her with a wave of his hand, and he stroked my hair gently, calming me. Adira, he called seriously. My name sounded so sexy when he used it. No one will mistreat you again, ever. I will punish those who do myself because no one disrespects my queen. He was solemn as he uttered those words, and I believed each word. I only nodded and took his hand. I'll make you breakfast if you don't mind, I said. And he smirked. It made my heart skip a bit. What? Nothing. And as much as I'd like to come in and eat what you cook, I have a meeting, he said. I sighed and waved at him, but he didn't turn around to leave. Instead, he was looking past my shoulder. I turned around and followed his gaze to the window. Lucas was standing there, watching us with a frown. That is Lucas. I am sure he is angry that I didn't call last night, I said, and he waved at the boy, but my brother didn't react. I have a feeling. He won't like me. He is just angry. I better go and pacify him with eggs and bacon. I said. He still didn't leave. Go, I urged. He nodded and turned to leave. He didn't reach far when he turned around to wave at me. Bye, little bird. No, I screamed. Not him too. Jet and Aspen told me what happened that night. I closed my ears and rushed into the house. Did they tell him how I fell from the tree? Wyatt didn't seem as brutal and cold-hearted Alpha King people talked about. He seemed normal. He is not a normal wolf. Adira, it took all my power not to run from him. You might not feel it as much as I do. but he is a very powerful man, and his aura is dark and tumultuous. I am hungry. My brother's voice came. I am sorry, love. I passed out, I said. You were drinking. No, I was just too tired and slept. That is why I didn't call. Wyatt, point of view. I took a shower and got ready for the day. My beta and gamma were outside my door. As soon as I stepped out, yes. Did you find out anything about Adira Wade? I asked, and suddenly the floor looked so interesting to them. Aspen, Jet, answer my fucking question now. Wyatt, we did ask around, and yes. She is abused both physically and emotionally. Also was imprisoned and tortured for over 6 months after her parents' execution. It was bad. Wyatt. They even had her in solitary confinement. She is a strong girl, Jet added. I was fucking enraged. They didn't only kill her parents but abused her too. I want them all to pay. I want names of her tormentors, all of them no matter how small the issue was. I ordered. They followed me as I marched to the Alpha's office. Reaching his office, I pushed the double doors open and he stood up. I glared at him and the fucker was shaking. My king, you didn't have to come all this way. You should have sent for me and I would have rushed to you, he said, coming around to me. I was surprised he dared to. Mars was a coward. Everyone knew that even though he pretended to be pompous and powerful in front of others. You fucking lied to me. You're king. I don't understand, he said, wiping his face with a white cloth. Mars was sweating like a pig. You allowed your pack to bully, mistreat, abuse, and even torture my mate for years, I spat. It is not like that, and questioning her after her parents' betrayal is pack procedure, he stammers, and locking her up and torturing her to admit to something false. We just didn't want to risk the pack. The man couldn't even formulate sentences. We just didn't want to anger you. That is why we hid the truth. I didn't want to anger you, and what happened? Does he look happy now? Aspen cut him, glaring at the man who looked at him in fear. Forgive me, sir. It was my mistake, Mars said. I enjoyed seeing him like this, so humble and pathetic because he is nothing. You have to be punished for not only lying to me but for all the crimes you committed against Adira, I declared. His eyes bulged, and he shook his head. No, King Wyatt. I've always protected that girl even though all members demanded she should be exiled from the pack. And on top of that, I got her in a good home where she can take care of her brother and be far from the pack house where she received ill treatment. Do you want me to applaud you for doing that? As an alpha, you must protect everyone in your pack. I growled, anger rising in me, and Rolf wanted to tear this man to shreds. He hated that our beautiful mate wasn't treated right because of accusations that were made against her parents. You are right, I didn't handle the situation as I should have, he continued, but I already turned a deaf ear to his pleas. So, I asked my beta and gamma to show him hell in the training field, and they were allowed to make permanent injuries. I want everyone who hurt my mate to pay, I said via MindLink. Jet was more than happy to oblige. Torturing criminals was his favorite pastime. Leaving Mars' office, I went to do some work, but my wolf was urging me to go to her, but I didn't. By evening, all I was hearing were screams and cries of pain from some pack members. I decided to go to the training fields, where 10 of my men were torturing anyone who had anything to do with my mate's abuse. And I smirked when I saw the Alpha's son. Whatever his name is, I didn't care enough to know it as he wasn't important to me. He is down from his high. Now, he was beaten and barely recognizable. His wife's fingers were broken too. Damn, my men are good at this torturing shit. They need a raise. We need to kill that man, Rolf growled. I growled, thinking how he behaved earlier when he was high on drugs. He must be the man who deserted her. The motherfucker even married her best friend. His loss my gain. He was glaring at me, and I smirked. My king, isn't this too much? Mars asked. He was no exception from the hell, and I see they did a number on him. I ignored him and watched the crowd. What have you done? A soft voice came from behind me. Adira, the heroine, is currently facing a difficult situation and needs your support. Please leave your words of encouragement for her in the comments section. Adira. I was watching a movie with Lucas when I heard a buzz through the mind link. People were saying that the Alpha King's men were going around, selecting members of the pack from their homes to torture them. I wonder what they did this time. This pack was trouble. And I am sure they did something to bring the king's anger. I shut off the mind link. What do you want for lunch? I asked. He thought for a while. No pizza, I said. This kid loved pizza so much. Take out? Or you are making it? I'll order from a restaurant, I said, feeling lazy to cook. I want fish and chips and a coleslaw without mayo. I grabbed his phone and ordered the food. And in 30 minutes, they delivered right to my door. We ate the food in front of the TV. I don't get why boys get excited about violence. Look, that guy was just a bystander, and boom, he is dead. I frowned. I don't get half of the films you select, but I watch anyway, he shrugged. No wonder I liked watching with Gray. He got this, as if realizing what he said, he froze. His worried gaze was on me. I gave him a tiny smile, telling him it was all right. Luca and Grayson were close, and it hurt him when he left us like the others. Adira, he called, putting his food on the coffee table. Why did that man kiss you? I saw this question coming, but I didn't know it would take this long. He says we are mates, I said, pausing the movie when his mood dampened. You are leaving me, he whispered, tears threatening to fall from his eyes. I smiled and cupped his face. I will never leave you ever. You are my only family in this world, and I love you more than anyone, I said firmly, but you'll have to go to his pack and his house. I am not even sure if we are mates, but if a time comes to leave this pack, you are coming with me. You and I together always, kiddo. I hugged him, and he held me. He pushed me off him. Stop being emotional, woman, he sighed, and I gaped at him. He was the one about to cry at the thought of losing me. I only shook my head, boys. A few hours later, I opened the pack link again. The buzz was louder, and everyone had something to say. The Beta twins are there too, someone said, and I squinted my eyes. Just what the fuck was happening in that field today? I needed to find out if it was true. Hey, I'll be back, I told Luca. He frowned, and I ruffled his hair before bolting out of the house and down to the training ground. I gasped at the sight. I couldn't believe it. There were a dozen people who looked beaten black and blue. I recognized all of them. Torture devices were lying on the floor, and some men were punching each other. The women were crying. As I walked around, no one dared look me in the eyes. I soon found the Steven twins. They glared at me. How could you ask the king to punish us? Look at my fingers, Kara spat. Her fingers were bloody, and her skin wasn't as flawless anymore. Debbie looked as though she wanted to kill me, but I know she wouldn't dare, especially with the limp. Kara tried to strike me, but I held her wrist. Are you sure that is wise? I asked, raising my eyebrows, and she put her hand down, her fist clenching. Good girl, I heard your whole family is here today, so if you are done, you should leave to make room for others. I smiled tightly. I hated that I was enjoying this too much. It wasn't right, and what did she mean they were punished because of me? I spotted the Alpha King on the bleachers, watching the situation with a stoic expression. Alpha Mars was telling him something, but he didn't give him the time of day. I approached the duo, and he stiffened when he sensed my presence. What have you done? My voice was cold. I didn't want anyone punished for my sake. He turned to me with no emotion whatsoever on his face. Punishing the bastards who hurt you, he answered, grabbing my waist and kissing me. I flushed, and my mind went blank. I pulled from him and stood between his legs. We were close, and I blushed more. Why are you doing all this? They hurt you, he answered, as if torturing half the pack for a woman was normal. You just can't go around punishing anyone who hurt me, King Wyatt, I said. It was the first time I spoke his name out loud, and he tilted me towards him. Wyatt, he said. Call me Wyatt. I nodded and practiced it on my tongue, making a small smile tugged his lips and I melted. They pissed me off with something too, he said quietly and I nodded. My king. The Alpha Mars tried to get his attention. I forgot he was here with us. Shut up! You are annoying me. It will be done when I say so, he growled annoyed at him. A different aura surrounded us. Alpha Mars felt it because he retreated immediately. I'd do the same, but he was holding me tightly. Their punishment was done for the day and wet, and I went to his guest bedroom. Want to shower? He asked. No, I am good, I said. It was a little chilly. He took off his shirt and my gaze roamed over his god, like muscular chest. He was curved perfectly. Sure, the creators took special time to make him because no one could compare. My pussy was pulsating at this point, yet not all his clothes were off. Wyatt smirked, and his eyes were darker than ever now. He smelled my arousal. He gestured for me to stand up and I obliged. He caressed my face and bent down to kiss my lips. My heart was pounding, and he bit my bottom lip gently. I parted them and he explored my mouth with his tongue. The kiss was soft but intense. His hands were on my side, caressing softly. He pulled away from me and I felt so much emotion and passion. My face was burning red under his searing gaze. You are my mate mine, he said, and put his forehead over mine. The king kissed me again, this time more demanding. It was so good that a moan escaped my lips. I felt excitement rise in me as he caressed me. My legs automatically wrapped around his bare torso. I bit my lower lip as the sensation turned into pure lust for this man. More, I moaned. His kisses on my neck drove me crazy, and I could only feel his massive reaction under his jeans. Of course, he said in a deep voice. His fingers were now caressing my breasts, and I moaned, pleasure building between my legs. Before we could do anything more, his phone rang, and I pulled away from him with a gasp. He checked his pockets and pulled out a phone. He frowned and put me down. I am busy, he said, as soon as he answered, and I frowned at the change of mood. I sat back on the sofa, my fingers playing with my hair. He excused himself to go to the balcony. My phone chimed and I checked. It was the babysitter telling me that she had an emergency. The king was still busy. He was pissed at whosoever he was talking to. I left the room only to be stopped by the king's gamma. Where are you going? He asked in the unfriendliest manner. I narrowed my gaze. None of your business, I snarled, and he grimaced. The king doesn't want you going around alone, especially after what happened earlier, he said. What happened earlier? I asked with a confused expression. Those two girls almost attacked you at the training field, he said coldly. He saw that. Is that why Debbie and Kara retracted from me? And here I was thinking I scared them. Well, I can take care of myself and I need to go home to check on my little brother, I said, trying to move past me, but he blocked my path. I glared daggers at him, but his face was placid. I attempted to run past him, but his large hand easily caught me and gently pushed me back. Don't fucking lay your hands on me, I hissed. The bedroom door opened and King Wyatt stepped out, glowering at his gamma before looking at me. What is going on? He is not letting me leave, I sneered. I leave you for 3 minutes. And you are already running away from me. I told you. She is a bird, this one. She doesn't hesitate to use those short legs of hers. Gammajet said seriously. King Wyatt chuckled, and my heart skipped a bit. He circled his arm around my waist and pulled me closer to him. Don't leave me, he told me. He turned his head to the gamma and growled dangerously. Don't fucking touch her. Unless you are protecting her, Jet nodded and left quietly. I am going home. Lucas is alone, I told him, and he held my hand and walked me to my house. Surprisingly, he decided to enter the house. He bent down a little at the door and I giggled. "This is my home," I said. He looked around with his eyes. "You have a lovely home." "Thank you." The house was not large like any other in the pack, but it was home, cozy, and fully furnished. Luca walked into the room we were in and froze at the sight of the intimidating king. He took a step back, his eyes fixed on me. "Luca, come here," I said. He reluctantly walked towards me all while keeping his gaze on Wyatt. "This is King Wyatt. And Wyatt, this is my baby brother Lucas Wade." The king crouched down to his level and smiled, a full, genuine one. "Hello, Lucas. It is very nice to meet you." Luca looked at me first, before shaking his hand. The boys were awkward around each other at first, but the air lightened up when Wyatt asked about a match my brother was watching. "Yes. He is only the best player ever. Colin is the best, but don't let Aspen hear you," the king agreed. The two were now engaging in discussion about the football players when I stood up to prepare dinner for us. Reaching the kitchen, I preheat the oven and got out chicken breasts from the freezer to make homemade chicken nuggets and chips. An hour later, I was done with everything along with the salad. I heard the doorbell ring and asked Luca to get it while I did some last-minute touch. Addie, there are big men outside and are scaring me," he hollered, and I went to check. It was Beta Aspen and Gamma Jet. "What are you doing at my home?" I pointed at them. "Oh, the undersized bird is scary now," Gamma Jet taunted. I was about to retort when my mate stood in front of me. "Stop you too!" The king sighed. I stepped away, making room for the two men. Just like their king had done earlier, they also inspected the place with their eyes before taking a seat. The room seemed small with tall, huge men there. Hot men. Their aura was surrounding the whole house, and I was surprised I didn't bolt out of there. "What are we watching tonight?" the beta asked as I go back into the kitchen. I had to make more food. 30 minutes later, I brought the food out, and I was shocked to see Wyatt follow me to the kitchen, assisting me to bring out all the food. I smiled at him, and he kissed my temple. "Thank you." We finished eating, and everyone was pleased with my cooking. Luca was sleeping, and Aspen offered to take him to bed. The boys decided to watch a movie, and after debating on what they will watch, they decided on Deadpool. I woke up later in my bed. I sat up straight and went to the salon. They all left and cleaned the place. I sat on the sofa, picking up the cushion Wyatt used and inhale his scent. I took a shower and changed into my lacy nightdress. I opened the door to get some fresh air and found myself on the bench under my favorite tree. I was thinking about my king. He was so gentle and sweet to me, making me wonder if the rumors about him being a monster were false. My entire body stiffened when I saw him in front of me. I stood up, unable to believe he was right there. How does he move so stealthily? My eyes roamed on him. He was only wearing shorts, and his body was to die for. "Hey," he breathes. "Wyatt, what are you doing here?" I asked. "I couldn't sleep, so I went for a run, and my wolf urged me to come here. Who knew I'd meet a goddess," he said, and I reddened from excitement. He kissed me with passion, and I reciprocated with the same energy. His body was pressed against me, and his lips met my neck. He was so good with his tongue, and I moaned. His fingers were caressing my body gently. I wheezed when he abruptly lifted me into his arms. My pussy was throbbing for him, and I am sure he smelled my arousal. I wanted him. Now, my hands went to the back of his neck, and I found myself thrusting against him. "You want me, little Adira?" he whispered, and I nodded eagerly. His huge dick was pressed against me, and he lifted my dress. He touched my pussy, and my breath hitched as he caressed my clit, all while kissing me. He used his lightning speed to take me to my room and placed me on the bed. He got on his knees and kissed my inner thigh. My chest was heaving in anticipation, and I screamed in ecstasy when his tongue thrust into my core. Oh, fuck. I was over my head with pleasure. Wyatt placed one of my legs over his shoulder as he thrust faster and more incredibly. his hands fondling my breasts. His tongue twirled around me, and I come undone, screaming his name. I was breathing heavily, and my vision darkened. "You taste fucking delicious," he said, parting my lips with his fingers, and I sucked them sensually. He smiled and kissed my lips down to my neck and then my stomach. "You are so beautiful. Did you know that?" he whispered. I was feeling so hot and embarrassed all at once. I just met him 2 days ago, yet I am allowing him to do all kinds of things to me. I kicked those thoughts away from me and concentrated on the feather, like kisses he was giving me on my stomach. He went down on me again, and I arched my hips, my feet curling as I felt overwhelming pressure again. I cried out his name softly as I drowned in pleasure, and as much as I tried to muffle my moans, it was useless. He was too good, and for the second time the orgasm left me shaking. He lay next to me, his hands caressing my jaw. My fingers were on his torso, and I leaned down to kiss him. Our arousal filled the air, and his deep scent was driving me wild. "Why aren't we mating?" He made no move to do so. Our hearts were beating as one, and soon his breath evened and his eyes closed to sleep. I kissed his lips and whispered, "Good night." Wyatt's point of view. I watched her intently. My mate was more than the word beautiful indeed. She had a radiant face, long lashes, and a nice sculptured nose that suited her with plum lips that were soft and kissable. My heart pounded every time she was near. A woman has never made me feel this way. I inhaled her scent again. It was addictive and calmed my inner wolf. I didn't want a mate because I am not a good man. I have killed and done everything that would repulse a woman like her, so I told myself I'll never get a mate but seeing her just once. All that changed. I wanted to hold her and protect her. I wanted to mate and mark her, but I knew better. If I marked her now, all my enemies will aim at her. And they are so many, including the new Dark Wolf King. Her eyes slowly fluttered open, and her beautiful eyes met mine. She blushed, remembering what happened last night, and I smirked. Adira covered her face with her hand and tried to turn away, but I grabbed her wrist. "Embarrassed, are we?" I said huskily. She was too perfect. She suddenly straddled me, taking me by surprise. "Good morning, mate." She kissed me on my lips and sat on my legs smirking. "Morning, my lovely lady." Her heart was pounding in her chest, even though she acted so bold now. "I'll go and get ready for the day," she said, and got off me quickly. "And I'll make breakfast," I murmured. I walked to the kitchen, browsing through the fridge. I got eggs and bacon and prepared the food. I wasn't a good cook, but I made a decent breakfast, so that is a start. Luca walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes when he saw me there. "Morning," I greeted, but his frown deepened. "What are you doing here?" he asked icily. "Someone is overprotective of their sister. I thought we got along fine yesterday." He sat at the counter stool and I pushed him a plate of eggs and he poured himself juice. "You are going to be around a lot, won't you?" he asked, disappointed. I nodded and finished making breakfast for my mate. She came and kissed my cheek. "Breakfast, thanks," she said. We sat down to eat quietly. I could tell Lucas and Adira were mind-linking. "Wyatt, when are we leaving? We have trouble at the pack," came Aspen mind-link. I sighed, knowing the dark wolves were attacking us again. Before I became king, the werewolf realm was led by a cruel man. He let his mind and heart be corrupted by the sorcery's dark spells. He only ever wanted more power than he already had and did malicious things to attain it. He killed anyone who spoke against him. It was a dark time for our people, but when I became of age, I challenged and killed him. I imprisoned, banished, and killed some who were loyal to the former king, but they were a large number and we couldn't eradicate them all so over the years. They managed to rebuild, and now rumors are spreading that they groomed another king who will lead in their interest and take my throne. "Alpha, are you still there?" he asked, concerned. "Soon, I'll tell Adira that we are going," I said. Looking at my mate, "You are taking her?" Jet asked. "Of course, she is my mate, and I am not leaving her for these vultures. I bellowed. And Rachel? Rachel Taryon is the sister of Alpha Richard Taryon of the Silver Dawn Pack. They played a huge role in the battle against the Dark King since they had the numbers and wealth. The old Alpha agreed to aid me in the war on the condition that I take his daughter as my Luna when I am ready to take one. We made an oath in front of many. It wasn't a hard decision to make at the time because I had no intentions of finding my mate, and Rachel and I grew up together. And we fucked a couple of times, but I had no feeling for her. She didn't mind that I fucked others so. I agreed. Her wolf chose you as her mate, and I didn't choose her as mine. In fact, I warned her not to fall for me. But she did. She even tricked me into marking her as my Luna when I was all drugged up. I roared. I wasn't too upset about it that time because I didn't think I'll find my mate, but now it angered me. That was low of Rachel. Jet sighed. I need to talk to Richard and his father. I need to break the oath. They won't take kindly to it. You have been fucking Rachel for years and you just want to ditch her? Jet asked. That woman is in love with you. Aspen chuckled. I am the fucking werewolf king and won't answer to anybody. My word is the law, and if I break my pledge to them with good reason, no one will dare question it. I declared and closed the mind link. It won't be easy, Wyatt. Rolf said. I fucking knew that. It was a blood oath, but I can't reject my mate, not when I know her, and is slowly becoming the center of my existence. Do you have a girlfriend, Wyatt? Lucas asked, getting me out of my thought, and I choked on my coffee. My gaze went to my mate. She wanted to know as well. No. Why would you ask that? Because your phone has been vibrating for a while and you don't answer it. He shrugged. I frowned. I didn't even hear it as I was lost in my thoughts. It is work. I didn't lie. Rachel was calling, but for work. She was an ambassador of her pack in the palace. Later in the afternoon, Wyatt was taking me out for a date, so I got ready in a pastel-colored dress with a flattering rushed bodice and let my hair down before wearing some heels. You look pretty, my brother said. I turned away from the mirror. Thanks. Can you help me with the earrings? I asked. He walked over and put my earrings for me. Are you going out with the king? He arched an eyebrow. I sighed and stood up. Lucas still didn't like the king too much, even though they watched 2 football games together. He was just scared that I might get hurt again. It was hard when my pack and all my friends turned their backs on me, but I survived. I cupped his cute little face. I'll be fine, and I want this, I think. I swallowed. So far, the Alpha King has been nothing but gentle and kind toward me. I heard bad stories about him, he said slowly. We can't judge people based on stories, Luca. We get to know them first and make a decision for ourselves, I said. And he nodded. I inhaled and went outside. My mate was in the driveway. He wore a black shirt that showed off his biceps and jeans that fitted him perfectly with brown boots. His dark hair was a little messy, and a delicious jolt washed through me when his lips curled into a tiny smile. You look beautiful, my queen, he said. I was in a storm of emotions at those simple words. The look in his eyes made me tremble. He kissed my lips passionately and pulled away, brushing my hair behind my ears. Is that for me? I asked, noting the rose in his hand. Yes. He gave it to me. Thanks. He pecked my lips. Daisies, I said as smelled it. Daisies are my favorites. I'll keep that in mind. So, where are we going? I was hoping you could tell me. I arched my eyebrow at him in surprise. You asked me out, mister. You grew up here. I didn't. I thought of where to take him. It was 3 p.m. already, so I took him to my favorite spot. It was a small green park that barely had people. The gateman smiled at me kindly. I paid for the tickets as I insisted and dragged him to the swings. I sat on one and he stood behind me, pushing it gently. I remembered going there as a kid with my parents but frowned. I didn't want to think about that. You like this place? Wyatt asked. I used to come here as a child with my parents. Unlike the main park, This one is quieter and more peaceful, I told him. He sat next to me and took my hand in his. I told him what I liked in this pack and everything I did as a child, and he listened attentively. Why teaching? He asked. I like kids and educating them. I shrugged. We were talking about career choices. Wyatt owns a huge corporation and is affiliated with the pack. It is known globally world, so you deal with technology, among other things, but I don't want to bore you with my tedious work, he said. His phone rang, and he groaned, pulling it out of his pocket. I saw on the caller ID that it said, Rachel. He kept staring at it. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked, and he quickly ended the call, switching off his phone at once. I wondered who Rachel was. I wanted to ask but didn't. It was too soon and I didn't know what we were yet. We were mates, but what happens now? Tell me about your pack. Is it as beautiful as it is on TV or in magazines? I asked. The Black Diamond pack is as you see it, he answered. I thought back to the pack I saw on TV. It was bigger than any I have seen, with tall buildings and huge bridges. And you are the king. What is it do you want to know? Wyatt frowned, his gentle gaze on me. Are you a cold-blooded killer as they say? I blurted out, my fingers rushing to cover my lips. I am king, and I have done things I am not proud of. Adira, I am always a target. My pack is always targeted, so we are forced to do things to protect ourselves and home. His gaze was far away and slowly. He looked down at his hands. I took his hands and kissed them. It is getting late. I think we should eat, and I exactly know where. I smiled and pulled him up. He surprised me by pulling me back to his chest and squeezing my butt before lifting me. He kissed me deeply and hungrily before putting me down. I am hungry indeed, he said in that sexy tone that made me think he wasn't only hungry for food, but for me. I caressed his cheek. Let's go eat then, I said slowly, and I guided him out of the park. It was almost dark when we reached a corner restaurant. I used to come here a lot, but since the incident with my parents, I was banned. The manager gasped seeing me and was about to say something caustic to me, but the king appeared in her line of vision and her lips were sealed, bowing to the king. It is an honor to have you here, my king, she stuttered her words. Wyatt was intimidating indeed. I can only imagine all those weak or rankless wolves. I bet they couldn't be in the same room as him for more than a minute. Penny, can we have a table on the roof? I said. She sent me a glare that Wyatt didn't miss. Is there a problem? No, sir. I will get your table ready, she said. Almost sprinting to instruct the staff. This pack makes me want to kill people, he said seriously. Don't do that. We went upstairs and I smiled as the cool air hit me. I loved this view. I missed it. He pulled out a chair for me and kissed my shoulder and sat. The menu soon came and we ordered what we wanted. He grabbed my hand suddenly and my heart quickened. Adira, we have to leave soon, he said. I knew this was coming sooner or later. He couldn't stay here forever. I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say, so he continued. You and your brother are coming with me to my pack. As your Luna, I asked. He looked at me dubiously, and I arched my eyebrows at that. He was in turmoil. Was he not telling me something? I wanted to ask if he was hiding something when he spoke. Of course, but for now, you'll just be my mate. I squinted my eyes. Only because we need to take care of some formalities, and after they are sorted out, you'll be my queen officially, he said. Oh yes, he had to inform the parliament about finding his mate. I also forgot that I have to wait for my first shift. We soon finished eating, and the waitress brought us dessert. Wyatt only had 1 or 2 spoons of it, and I ate the rest. I love dessert. After the food, we took a stroll through the pack before he took me back home. "Want to come in?" I asked. He sighed and pulled me closer to him. I almost slammed into his hand chest, but he gently put a hand on mine. He cupped my face before bending down to kiss me. I would love to, but I am not Lucas's favorite wolf right now, so I'll head back and see you tomorrow, he said. He will warm up to you soon. I am sure of that after all. We support the same clubs and like the same football players. He grinned before sucking in a deep breath and hugging me. His arms brought warmth to my body, and I wanted to stay like that for a long time. Jian, Jian, Jian. The next 2 days I was packing my clothes and stuff I needed to take to the Black Diamond Pack. I went to the school I worked as a teacher's assistant. I needed to say goodbye to the students and also get Lucas's transcript. I spent the whole day there. The kids were sad that I was leaving. I'll miss you, Miss Wade. The little girl in my class waved as she got on the bus. I sighed and turned back to the head teacher. That is the last one. I sighed. She approached me and smiled. We shall miss you around here, Adira. Do take care of yourself, she said. I watched as she went to the parking lot. I went back into the school building to get my purse and files. I froze when I saw him standing in the hallway. I didn't want to be anywhere alone with this man. 80, he waved, pushing himself off the wall. Grayson, what are you doing here? I spat. He frowned at me and took large steps towards me. I heard you were leaving, he said. So, is that all you have to say? We dated for years. I didn't know. I needed your permission to leave the pack with my mate. He looked offended after my words and he clenched his hands. I tried to move past him, but he grabbed my waist and spun me around to him. His lips crashed on mine before I could even think to push him away. I did finally and slapped him across his face. He wasn't stunned instead. He inhaled my scent and held me in an embrace. Don't leave me. Don't go with that jerk, he begged. Inhaling more of my scent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this man crazy? He must be if he could even utter such words. What will your wife think when she hears you were here, begging me not to go? I challenged. He stilled at the thought of Stacy, but only for a moment. I don't care about her. You know I don't love her, he said, looking into my eyes. He was being honest. Then, why did you marry her? I had to. As future alpha, I'll do things I don't want for the betterment of the pack, my people. I scoffed at that. I glared at him. Thank you, Grayson. He seemed confused. For what? For leaving me when you did, for not standing by my side when I needed you most. Marrying you would have been the biggest mistake of my life, I said calmly. He was hurt and I enjoyed causing him pain. I hated causing you pain, but they told me to. It was a presentation of force and to show everyone that traitors would be punished no matter what status they hold. Do you honestly believe that my parents betrayed this pack? My question left him in silence. Like me, he didn't believe a word about the coup, but Grayson had no power to do anything. So I didn't blame him for what happened to my parents, however. I hated that he just went along with everyone and just forsaken me. We stared at each other for a long time. Don't leave, please, he repeated. Desperate this time. He wasn't going to let me go, so I kneed him in the balls, and as I expected, he let me go and touch the area in pain, almost crouching down. Goodbye, Grayson. Have a happy life. You don't even know for sure if he is your mate, he growled. I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back as he screamed for me. It broke my heart to hear him cry for me like that, but he made his bed long ago so he should lay in it. He hurt me more than anyone. His silence hurt more than any blows I received. His betrayal broke me more than the glares of contempt I received from the majority of the pack members. I was walking through the quiet night street until I reached home. I found Wyatt standing under the tree. He was waiting for me. You are crying, he whispered. I brought my fingers to my face, and indeed it was wet. I hadn't realized I was crying. I was embarrassed that I cried for Grayson. No, it must be the cold, I said. But my voice sounded foreign to my ears. The Alpha King was in front of me in a flash. He cupped my face and said again, You were crying. I shook my head to deny it, forcing a smile on my lips. "Who hurt you, Adira?" he asked. His aura was ferocious. "No one did." "Then why are you crying? Just tell me who and I will punish the 80% of the pack members again." I cut him off rudely. I didn't like that he punished them. Not all were bad. Okay, most of them were terrible to me, but he shouldn't have done that. Wyatt froze and sniffed my hair. Took him long enough to catch his scent on my clothes. "I'm going to fucking kill him," he growled. I grabbed his hand before he could turn around. He just wanted to say goodbye. "We were together for so long," I lied. I didn't know Wyatt too well, but I could tell he was impulsive, especially when it came to matters that concerned me. Believe it or not all girls need a knight in shining armor. "I know how to defend myself," I added. He stroked my hair. "Let's get you a shower," he said, and I followed him inside. Lucas was playing video games and only glanced up to look at me. "Were you crying?" "No. It is cold outside," I answered weakly. He didn't believe me but didn't push for more information. He glared at the king. "He is here again." My lips formed into a straight line as I glared at Luca for his comment. He smiled sheepishly at me and I murmured a sorry. "Not to me." He frowned as his gaze flashed to Wyatt. "I'll try to tolerate you, but if you hurt my sister, you are dead." King or not, Luca's eyes flashed purple and I gasped. He was serious. "I am scared," Wyatt mocked, and I narrowed my eyes at him. He only kissed my temple before going to seat on the couch, next to Luca. "Have you guys eaten?" I asked. "No." They answered in unison. "Order Chinese," I hollered, going to the bedroom. Reaching my bedroom, I inspected the room. I will miss this home. Even though the pack members didn't treat me with kindness, this home was my haven. Our little place. I was happy. Luca didn't go through half of what I had to endure, because he is a kid, and the young ones didn't know anything about politics. But he would come home. Angry because someone commented something about me to him and the boy knew how to throw a good punch. I quickly showered and wore my shorts, soft t-shirt, and socks. I pulled my hair into a messy bun before going back to the main room. My mouth watered at the delicious goodness on the table, and I sat on the carpet, grabbing my food to eat. "Have your men gone back?" "I haven't been seeing them lately," I said. "Some did with Aspen, and the others are traveling with us tomorrow," he answered, eating his noodles. I nodded. "So we are going with Brooding Jet." For some reason he irked me. "You must be sad to leave your friends," I told Luca. "It sucks." "Do we have to go?" "Yes. We talked about this. I told him last night that we'll be leaving and to say goodbye to his friends and teammates. But I am the football team captain, and everyone is sad to see me leave. Even my coach cried on the field," he said. "Coach Shelley is an emotional man. I wonder how he coaches 20 boys. I frowned. Remembering the huge man? He breaks down a lot in the locker rooms. But you are missing the point again. We are going to finals against the Dark Fluorite Pack soon, and I have been training for this. I am sorry, babe." I gave him an apathetic smile that he didn't return. I understood why he didn't want to leave. He hated change and he'll miss his friends. "I won't even see Florence," he grumbled. Florence was a cheerleader from Fluorite Pack, and that is why he was looking forward to this season's game. "They only meet at tournaments." I smiled at him and jumped up to sit next to him. "Are you guys dating?" Luca was so red, and he turned to look away. I continued pestering him about it until his mood was better. All while, I felt my mate's eyes bore into me. I glanced up to see him smiling softly at us. Luca retired to bed, and my mate pulled me onto his lap so that I was straddling him. My body trembled as he brought his lips closer to my neck. My hands went to the back of his head and to chase away my shyness. I kissed him gently. He smiled at me and smooched me back softly, deep and sensual. His hands wrapped around my waist, and he pulled me closer to him. I was pulsating with need. "You are fucking mine, baby." My hips were grinding against him sensually, and his lips were all over my chest. I moaned loudly when he bit me. His hands were under my shirt, playing with my breast. "Yes, I am yours," I whispered breathlessly. My core was throbbing now, and he could smell my arousal. I wanted this man so much. I needed him in me badly. "Make me yours, Wyatt." He was surprised by my plea. "You are already mine," he smirked, and my cheeks were red. "You know what I mean," I mumbled, biting my lower lips. He caressed my lips with his thumb sensually, and I sucked it slowly, all while looking at him. "You are not a shy one today," he commented. Oh, if only he knew. I am trying to act all brave, but the truth is that I am so embarrassed by everything, but I am too proud to let him know. "I am not a prude," I managed to say, and he raised an eyebrow, his hand wrapped around me. It was tight, but I could breathe. "Oh, really, mate?" I wasn't facing him. My eyes were stuck on his manly chest. "Then why aren't you looking at me?" I caressed his abs, and tingles rushed down my hand. "I am appreciating this great work of art you call a body." I was suggestive with my tone. He was impressed. The hand around my neck loosened, and he stared at me with his dark eyes. "So, how do you like it?" I knew what he meant by that. His warm lips trailed my neck gently. His hand loosened around my neck again. His kisses were driving me crazy, and my stomach was doing somersaults. However, his touch tightened. "Or rough, little mate?" I kissed him before I answered. "A little bit of both, actually." His breath hitched, and I felt his hard erection under his pants poking me. My hand slowly embarked down there, rubbing on top of his jeans. I could tell that he was huge. "Oh my, I want to take you fuck and make love to you," he husked. "I want you to scream my name, Pretty Wolf, and I want to make you come." I was feeling things as he pointed out all the things he would do to me. My body was trembling. "Yes, please do," I thought. My hips were shamelessly rocking against him. Wyatt's hands were on my hips now, guiding them slowly. However, his next words made me frown. "But not here. Not when the little guy is sleeping right next door to us." He was right. It is rude and disrespectful if a 12-year-old heard us fucking. I got back to my senses and jumped off him. I stumbled and I was feeling so hot. I quickly turned away from him and hugged myself. "I am tired," I whispered. He stood behind me, his hands on my shoulder, and he kissed my neck. "We should rest now." He held my hand and directed me to the bedroom. We stood in the middle of the room quietly. We were so close to each other. My hands reached to unbuckle his belt, and I threw it down, and slowly I removed his jeans, leaving him in his boxers. His member was still hard, and I swallowed just looking at it. I bit my lower lip. He growled sexily, and I burned with desire for him. We were both breathing so hard. The sexual tension in the room was so high. I tugged him into bed with me, and he lay next to me, and soon, sleep enveloped us. The next morning, I woke up to a huge erection poking me. Boys in mourning. He was awake but didn't open his eyes. I smiled and kissed his lips before my hands went down to touch his member. I caressed it with my fingers until it was harder than before. I slowly reached under his boxers, which made his eyes shoot open. "What are you doing?" he husked. I fucking loved his voice. But there was something about his morning voice that made my pussy clench with desire. "Shut up," I said. His lips formed a straight line and he cocked an eyebrow at me but obliged. I removed the boxers and massaged his length. He was beginning to react. Adira, you have to stop doing that," he stuttered, and I giggled. I loved it. I started jerking him off slowly, and his hip responded by grinding against my hand. As I continued, a wavered breath escaped his lips. "Adira. Oh fuck. Ah, yes." I rubbed him faster, and his breath was uneven. His mouth silently parted as soft sounds of pleasure left his delicious lips. He bit my shoulder as his desire intensified. He was about to come and I jerked harder. 1, 2 and his seed spilled all over my hand as he made a loud grunt. "Oh fuck," breathed heavily. I kissed his lips softly and he grabbed my waist, pulling me closer to him and tenderly kissed my forehead. I can get used to these mornings. Good morning, sweetheart. Good morning to you. We stayed in bed for a while longer, cuddling. I felt content and my wolf was at peace with this mighty wolf king. We later decided to get ready, and I quickly made breakfast for the boys. Luca was still scowling. He didn't complain though, knowing it was the best we could do. By noon, all our stuff was packed in the SUV, and Luca and I were looking at our little home, the house that brought us solace when we needed it most. I remembered coming here for the first time after I left the cells I was being held in after my parents' death. There was nothing other than a bed and mattress. I didn't wallow at the situation. I couldn't break because I knew I needed to be strong for Lucas, even though all I wanted to do was cry and break down. The poor boy was only 8 and an orphan. I looked for work in town. I worked 2 jobs. I cleaned homes and worked as a barista. My life was slowly coming together. With the little money the pack released from my parents' savings, I paid for my and Lucas's tuition. I renovated the house until we turned it into what it was. I felt an arm around me, and I smiled at Lucas. We had the same thoughts. "I'll miss it," I mumbled. "I will too," he said, and I kissed his hair. He smiled at me and tugged me toward the car. I grimaced when I saw Gamma Jet, and he did the same. Why didn't he like me? "The king is at the airstrip already," he informed me. I nodded. Wyatt had business to take care of, so we agreed to meet at the strip. He extended his hand to help me in the car when I caught the scent of someone. "Grayson." "This fucker again," Jet growled, glaring at my ex as he approached boldly. Grayson didn't look too well. He had a black eye, and his hair was cluttered. His eyes were red, and I saw dark circles under his eyes. Jet started to approach him, angry, but I tapped his back. "He is here. For me." "I know, but you are not allowed anywhere near him," he almost growled at me. His eyes were glowing. "Well, too bad." I shrugged and walked to him, but he followed. I shot him a deadly glare and he stood, frowning for a bit. "I'll speak to him, or I'll make your job difficult." "Trust me," I glowered, challenging him. The Gamma groaned and waved at the men that were following us. "Make it quick, and don't stand too close to him, or Wyatt will kick my ass." "I'd love to see that," I grumbled as I walked towards Grayson. "What happened to you?" I sneered. Grayson sighed and ran a finger through his hair. "That Dick King did this," he growled lowly, his eyes moving past my shoulder to Jet. I glanced back at the Gamma who had a proud look on his face. "Why?" "I approached him about taking you away and he reacted." My lips parted slightly. What was he thinking to try to stop his king? Wyatt could end his life in seconds. Grayson may be a strong alpha, but he wasn't the strongest for miles. "Whatever. I am leaving now," I spat. The expression on his face left me confused. He has been avoiding me for years, and now that I have found my mate, that is when he wants to come in and act like we've been close. Pathetic. "You look ridiculous, Grayson, coming here and making a scene with the king. How do you think your wife feels?" "You are embarrassing her," I scolded harshly. He didn't say a word, only staring at me with a glint of pridefulness in his eyes. "I love you. And I will always." "I apologize for everything that happened." 80, he swallowed. "Whatever, I am over it and you." "Goodbye," I said, and turned around to leave, but he followed me. He went to Luca, who only glared at him. "Hey, buddy, I am not your buddy anymore," Luca said calmly. "The two used to be close, but it all changed after what happened, and my brother loathed Grayson for not sticking by us. Luca, please take care of yourself, and you can call me any time." Lucas only rolled up his window and Grayson looked pained by this. His eyes glistened, but he smiled. He raised his hand to caress my cheek, but a warning growl erupted from Jet's chest. "Let's go now, Luna." He emphasized the word Luna, not taking his eyes off Grayson. I entered the car and Jet drove us. I held Luca's hand and I closed my eyes, letting go of all the bad memories. The betrayal, the hurt, the cell, and the misery. I was starting anew. I needed this for myself and Lucas.